we're right now, Alex, in the Middle East in a situation and nobody knows what's going on. It seems that they are negotiating, the two sides are negotiating about the framework of some sort of deal or agreement. There was a report yesterday on Axios. It says that Donald Trump talked to Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday. The outcome of that call was not that much, positive for Benjamin Netanyahu because he wants to continue the war in the Middle East. After all, the only reason that he can survive in Israel would be the continuation of the war. And we know if something happens in terms of some sort of agreement deal between Iran and the United States, they have to put an end to the war on all fronts, at least some sort of ceasefire. We know that there is no ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon as we talk, but they're trying to do as much as possible to get as much as possible with negotiations. And on the other hand, Iranian assessment is that the war is coming. The intelligence, everything shows that the movement, covert, overt, everything. They say that the war is coming because the United States and Israel are preparing for that. And on the other hand, I think when it comes to the numbers, which matters the most, the United States doesn't have it. And if they start this new round of war, how long can they continue the war? It's going to be a week, more than it's going to be 10 days. And what would be the outcome of that for the United States, for what Donald Trump is trying to get from the Middle East? And to my understanding, he doesn't want to get trapped. He went to China. He saw what's happening in China. He saw a superpower coming and welcoming him. It wasn't, I would say it's not even comparable to what China was before the war in Ukraine started. This is the new reality of what the United States is facing. What is your understanding, and how do you see the situation in the Middle East as time goes by?
I think that maybe Trump is looking for a way out. And I think that he engineered the way out by speaking for many days, almost every day, several times a day, and repeating that Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb, pretending that that's the issue. That never was the issue, because the collective American intelligence community since 2007 reached a unanimous, high confidence assessment that the Iranians stopped working on a nuclear bomb in 2003 and that they never restarted. And then this assessment was repeated several times, and again in 2025 by his own DNI Tulsi Gabbard. So there's no inventing a new situation that, Iran is pursuing a nuclear bomb. You don't get to just invent your own fact, but that's what he's doing. And so it seems to me that he's doing two things. He's pretending that it's all about the nuclear bomb, and he's pretending that if his allies, Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Bahrain and UAE, if they find an acceptable settlement with Iran, that means that it's good enough for him as well, and he can declare victory and say, okay, our help in the region is no longer needed. But as you mentioned, that doesn't work for Benjamin Netanyahu. That doesn't work for Israel, because the Israelis are so keen on continuing the war, not only because Benjamin Netanyahu's own political life depends on it, but because they feel that they have to eliminate Iran, and it's now or never. Now they feel that this moment here is like their unique opportunity in time, where they have certain influence in the White House, dominance of Israeli interest, the Zionist interest in the United States, and so forth, and that they have to push this all the way to the end now. So I think that Trump is torn between his own political interests and Israel's interests. And I think that there's a danger that Trump will try to extricate himself, but that Israelis themselves will restart the war. And I believe that Trump probably would intend to end the war until November, because that's when he has the midterm elections, right? And then maybe in November, okay, let's go. Let's go to war again. And maybe he's trying to have that deal with the Israelis to say, like, let's just pause everything until November. Once I'm done with the midterm elections, then we can get back to business with Iran. But I don't think that Israel or Netanyahu have that kind of time. And I think that the danger is that if Israel starts the war, then the view is that they will drag the United States back into war with them, because Trump is not going to be able to sit on the side and say, "You're on your own. I'm not doing this anymore." The pressure on him will be irresistible, and he'll have to go back to war against Iran. Having said all that, there's nothing to win. They can't win. Even if they go nuclear on Iran, I don't think it's a certainty that they could win. And I think that there are indications that Israeli intention, or that Israelis are considering going nuclear. And I suspect that because of that big explosion that we saw a few days ago near Jerusalem, which apparently was the rocket booster testing facility for solid fuel. And if they were testing that, maybe they're preparing to launch big missiles at Iran. But then it gets even more complicated than that. The Chinese warned the Israelis, if you restart the war, we will intervene against you. They didn't say what or how, but something. The Pakistanis said, if you use nuclear missiles against Iran, we will use a nuclear missile against you. Now, you would think that dealing with rational people, that would put an end to the march to war. But we're not dealing with rational people. In Israel, they've gone completely insane. It's like the whole nation has gone psychotic, led by psychotic, fanatical leaders. So it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen. But I think that what we can predict is that neither Israel nor the United States nor the two together can defeat Iran. And I think that the Iranian leadership has taken nuclear possibility into account. And so therefore, all the important assets, all the strategic facilities are deep underground. They will probably withstand a nuclear strike. And that's why I think that the Iranian command and control has been decentralized into 31 different units, so that I think even if you flatten Tehran, they would go on fighting, and it would be, a similar situation like against Taliban in Afghanistan, where you took Kabul, you established the government in Kabul, but you still lost the war because the Taliban continued their war of resistance. And then there's no predicting how such an event could galvanize other countries and peoples in the region, in the neighborhood. And it would definitely energize them all against Israel. And there would be nothing that the United States can do to protect them. So I think that Israel would probably end up swept into the sea.
The case of nuclear weapons, and if the Israelis try to use them, was asked to one of the Iranian commanders. And he said, they're not, I don't see that much of panic in Iran if Israel, considering Israel, the use of nuclear weapons in Israel by Israel against Iran. And he said something that was, he said this, he said, we have weapons, we have things that those nuclear weapons of Israel would look like something like fireworks for us. We're going to do something to Israel that they can, you know, they can put an end to Israel. And I don't know what is that, but he said that we have all of we know we can go, we can escalate till the end. And this is the mindset on the part of Iran, and they don't feel they're not panicked that Israel may use a nuclear weapon or 10 nuclear weapons, and that's going to be the surrender of Iran. That's going to be the end of civilization, as Donald Trump wants to put it. And I think that the Trump administration or the intelligence community understand that. They know that Iran didn't use, Alex, Iran didn't use, they used less than 5% of their arsenal during the war. Less than 5%.
Yes, I also, Sergei Shoigu, the former defense minister of Russia, also said that Iranians have weapons that you have not yet seen, that are far more powerful than what we've seen so far. And then, I think that's probably real. And then, with respect to nuclear weapons, we have precedents. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were nuked. Hiroshima is still there. Nagasaki is still there. Japan is still there. Japanese people are still there. So, you inflict horrific damage and loss of life, but Iran is a massively enormous country with 92 million people. You could maybe destroy a city or a few cities. You could maybe kill a few million people, but you cannot end the civilization. So I'm not surprised that the IRGC people are not panicked. I mean, they probably understand fully well what could happen, but they also know that most people will survive, and probably the most powerful part of Iranian arsenal will definitely survive, because this is something that they have prepared for. And so it would be definitely a suicide blow on Israel's part. They would fire off their biggest weapon, and then very soon there would be no more Israel. It would be finished. And then it's not just what the Iranians would fire into Israel. It's that probably Jordanian government would fall. Probably Egyptian military would start pouring into Israel physically. Probably Hezbollah would start physically marching into Israel. Who knows what would happen to HDS government in Damascus, but it would very probably quickly fall. And then whatever remainder of Syrian Arab army is present in Iraq now would probably also lead the charge back, and it would really be an Armageddon type of assault on Israel that they would not be able to survive.
Alex, how do you compare the two summits, one of them between Donald Trump and Xi, the other one Putin and Xi? And it seems that Donald Trump's main concern was the Strait of Hormuz. He was talking about it. He was mentioning during the summit. But China main concern is Taiwan. They want to, put an end to this sort of ambiguity of the United States with the case of Taiwan. They don't want this sort of, problem. They consider Taiwan as, part of China. And nobody can change that reality, by the way. The United States officially accepts that. But when it comes to the, to the details,
unofficially, they still have troops there. They're still selling them weapons. And the whole juggernaut is set into motion with the view to a future war against China. And American military commanders on the ground are speaking in those terms. It's not a question of maybe, if China doesn't reform their democratic system, maybe we'll have to, if they try to take, maybe we'll have to intervene if they try to take. No, they're preparing for war, and they're even comparing the situation in Taiwan with the situation with Ukraine. They were saying, like, we're preparing the theater in the same way that we've done in Ukraine. So I don't know that even has anything much to do with Trump. This is a continuity of policy that goes back to Biden and to Obama and to Bush and so forth. It's the empire's imperative of ruling Eurasian landmass and eliminating all rivals, meaning Iran and Russia and China and anybody else who might get too uppity for them. The two summits, it's very clear that we're talking different class of political leadership. Trump came there with a group of billionaires. He came, well, according to some analysts who were citing contacts in Chinese diplomatic circles and Chinese government, Trump's delegation came unprepared. So they didn't come with a long-term agenda to discuss certain things. They came more like on a rapport building mission. Let's all be friends, help us with Hormuz, we'll maybe help you with other things, buy planes and soybeans from us and beef, open your markets to our technology companies, transactional. Whereas, Vladimir Putin's delegation went there with an army of negotiators, analysts, strategists, technicians, administrators, with documents and treaties and contracts that were finalized and signed. But they were, these documents were developed and negotiated for months and years before that. So they came with a completely different level of preparations, with the view of very long-term development that include strategic questions, energy, infrastructure, new security architecture, and so forth. Trump was help us with the Hormuz and buy our stuff, more like a sales mission. So it doesn't even compare. But I think that both the Russians and the Chinese, I think, still are cultivating the Trump administration in order to, as Sergei Karaganov said, in order to try to help the United States transition from being global hegemon to being a normal global power. And I think that with the Trump administration, they still have that opening. If it was an administration similar to Biden administration, they wouldn't even talk.
Yeah. Here is what she said during the meeting between she and meeting he had with Vladimir Putin.
The world today is far from peaceful, with unilateralism and hegemonism posing profound dangers. The world faces the risk of regressing to the law of the jungle. My proposal to build a community with a shared future for mankind and the 4 global initiatives have received widespread support from the international community, including Russia.
Yeah. And he's talking about jungle. I remember Joseph Borrell.
Yes. Yeah.
But the law of jungle comes out of hegemony and the hegemony sort of mindset. And those days are over, in my opinion. What has happened in Ukraine, what is happening right now in the Middle East, these are huge signs of what's going on. And in this new world, Alex, how do you see Donald Trump or the United States as a country redefining itself? Because they have to redefine themselves. There is no way out of this. Or you go, as we talk, we are right now in an active sort of conflict in the Middle East, and Donald Trump is talking about Cuba. I would assume, in less than 5 days or in a week, we're going to have something big happening in Cuba. I don't know what would be the outcome of that for the United States. And I don't see Cuban people being like Venezuelan people, or they have some sort of fifth column in Venezuela to go and participate with them or collaborate with them. And I don't see that happening the way it was in Venezuela. It's going to be different. It's because Cuba is different. People are different. Culture is somehow different. And Donald Trump, instead of understanding the reality, he's trying to do more in the Western Hemisphere, in my opinion, to gain more, or to have some sort of propaganda in the United States.
Yes, Nima, I agree with you, but I think that we should be careful not to focus too much on Trump and his administration, because these are plans and agendas that have been in place for decades. And they precede Trump, and they might continue after Trump. And Trump himself, on many occasions, was talking about ending this system, and he was talking about embracing the multipolar global order. And now, on 28 February, he completely switched and seemingly went into complete neo-colonialist, pro-empire rampage. And it's not just Iran, because Iran has kind of overshadowed everything else. It seems to me that the empire, and again, I'm not just talking about Trump, and I'm not even talking about just the United States. I'm just talking about the vested interests that define the Western empire. So it's not just the United States, it's the occult banking oligarchy that's in the city of London and on Wall Street, who are now panicked because they're losing on all sides, and they went on a rampage. So Trump took control of Venezuela for the time being. It's not certain. He wants to take control of Cuba. He wants to take control of Canada. He wants to take control of Greenland. But the battles that we are not seeing is that there's also a fight for political control of Bolivia, of Ecuador, of Peru, of Somalia and Sudan. AFRICOM is bombing Somalia practically every day this year. Nobody's talking about this. Then we see that France has mobilized tens of thousands of jihadi terrorist forces to try to get back control of the Sahel and their Western African former colonies. And we see also that the British, for 10 years now, have been trying to reestablish a colonial relationship with their former colonies, from Egypt down to South Africa, with some success. And they also had a plan explicitly to recolonize the east of Suez, Western Asia. So Trump is part of this, but he's not at the head of the pyramid. So again, as I tried to explain in the past, I think that the reason why they're doing is ultimately collateral, because they want to control the resources of all these resource-rich regions, because that collateral then gives a massive credit impulse to Western money center banks, City of London banks, Wall Street banks, Paris banks, and so forth. And the reason why they need this is because their own financial systems are imploding. And so the mystery of why Trump pivoted from talking about post-World War II global order is obsolete, we're going to embrace the multipolar global order, to going, boom, we're attacking and regime changing Iran, which is one of the biggest prizes in all this neo-colonialist rampage. It's a very strange thing that's hard to explain, and I know people will say like, well, that's because you're stupid, but there's a lot of stupid people out there, you know, like Tucker Carlson, who personally dealt with Trump on many occasions, talked about all these things, and was certain that Trump was on the same page with him. Tucker Carlson himself was shocked by the February 28th attack. So something happened. That's clear that something happened, but what happened is not clear. At any rate, it seems that at this time, the United States is back in the imperialist camp, pursuing its own neo-colonial formula. But at the same time, there's no denying that there's a conflict with the old colonists. Okay, because he may be in cahoots with Israel, but he's in this fight, which is getting very real. It's again overshadowed by Iran and the Middle East and everything. But there's a very real fight on the relation Donald Trump, Mark Carney, British Crown. And a few days ago, there was a secret meeting that Mark Carney hosted in Canada. That Barack Obama was there. Practically the whole DNC establishment, the top people, John Podesta, Neera Tanden, all of these Clintonites and Obama DNC were in Canada, cahooting with Mark Carney and other stewards of the old British Empire. So that's a real fight, and it seems that the conflict is so complex that it's very, very difficult to interpret what exactly is going on.